Well, hello lovely humans and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a DIY wedding acrylic sign. Now let me state for the record, just at the very beginning, I have mad respect for calligraphers. I am fascinated by their art form and I wish that I possessed like an ounce of the skill that they have to do all of this beautiful scripting and handwriting. But let's just be honest here, the Lord did not gift me with a calligrapher's hand, okay? Like I can appreciate it, but it's really, really hard for me to replicate it. But I have been dying to recreate some of these beautiful signs that I've seen all over Pinterest and at weddings, and I was like, there's gotta be a way that I could put something together that would kind of look like the way that the pros did it without the price tag, you know what I mean? But here are my problems. One, I don't have great handwriting. Like my handwriting's fine, it'll get by. It's not like doctor's handwriting, it is actually legible, but it's not beautiful by any stretch of the imagination. The second problem that I have is that as much as I love you guys, acrylic is really, really expensive and I did not want to spend like 50 bucks on buying one piece of acrylic for a DIY video. So I set out and found a cheaper alternative, which of course I will share with you guys, and a way to make my handwriting look a heck of a lot better. So without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. Okay, first up, supplies. I have blue painter's tape, a white paint pen, and that fancy frame that I was mentioning earlier that I actually got for $5 at Michael's. $5. Next up, the fancy fonts. And don't worry, I'll dive into what these are in just a moment, but I really feel like these, plus a little bit of floral design and leaves, make the sign pop. So a little backstory to the fonts. I actually got turned onto this website by a calligrapher friend of mine, and it's called creativemarket.com, and they have a bajillion different kinds of fonts for sale. So yeah, they cost a little bit of money, but honestly, you can use this for your invitations, you can use it for all of your signage, and they look way better than anything that you can download for free, at least in my opinion. And they have the option for you to go ahead and sample what you want typed in there, and I chose to type in welcome, because obviously that's what the sign ended up saying, but I also tried it out with mine and my husband's name as well. So feel free to jump on there, take a look around, and find a font that works for you. Next, I wanted some greenery, but I wanted it to be really easily traced, unlike some of the watercolor items or sketches, and this is actually the package that I ended up choosing. Don't worry, I'm gonna go ahead and link everything down below. So now let's jump into actually using the font. I've already downloaded it and loaded it into my font book on my computer, and for this particular sign, I used Adelicia Script Rough. And again, I'll link that down below, the package that I got. And using the ruler option up the top, I was able to measure out just how wide this word would end up being in the end. And go ahead and click print. Next, disassembling the frame. And because I'm a little bit of a nut job and I like to make sure things are nice and centered and even, I grabbed both a painter's tape and a measuring tape to mark the dead center of my sign. This is probably an extra step that you don't necessarily have to do, but if you're neurotic like I am and don't want to end up with a crooked sign, I 10 out of 10 recommend. Next, taking my pre-cut and pre-taped little welcome sign base tracer thing, I spent a decent amount of time measuring and remeasuring and remeasuring and scooting to make sure that it was in the perfect position before pressing it down firmly to make sure the tape attached well. And here's where the fun part begins. Grabbing that paint pen, I outlined the exterior of the letters. Now here's something that I learned while tracing. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. As long as your lines are smooth and as close as possible to the actual outline of the letters, it will come across a lot better. And I found that even if you screw up, it is pretty easy to go back in and scrape off the errant paint just in case you go a little bit outside the lines. After completing the outline for the word welcome, I then decided to move on to the rest of my phrase, to our beginning. And for this one, I use Montserrat. I don't even know how to pronounce that font. I believe that is a free Google font. Again, I'll link that down below. Because I wanted to give the welcome outline plenty of time to dry. When it comes to sans serif fonts or anything that's a nice, neat, straight line, it's a heck of a lot harder to trace. So I took my time, but I also knew going into this that it was not going to be picture perfect. It was gonna look like someone wrote it by hand, but hey, at least it's better than my original handwriting. because I wanted to add a little extra pizzazz to this sign, aka a magnolia flower and some leaves, I went ahead and measured out the center of the bottom of my sign so I could figure out where I wanted to place that flower. Always double checking and rechecking and checking over again my placement, and because as you've probably picked up by now, I am still pretty neurotic and I check and double check all of my placements just in case. Now, for the lettering that I did right before this and for the flower, I didn't end up taping them. However, if you have pets or small children or are prone to clumsiness, I do recommend taping these up beforehand because you definitely don't want to knock them and then have to realign your entire design. I was just feeling a little gutsy, you know? I just wanted to live on the edge for a little bit and trace without any tape. Now, because I'm right-handed, it works best for me to move from left to right so my hand doesn't smudge the artwork as I'm going. There you go, the completed flower, and now I'm going to grab my leaf PNG and put that directly underneath. As you can tell, I'm not using the entire image, but just the ends of this branch. Because I didn't want the whole bottom of the sign to be covered in leaves, I just wanted a little extra detail right there in the center. Now moving on to the other side, I actually used a different part of the branch because I didn't want the leaves to end up matching. Now this part's pretty self-explanatory. I just went back in and filled in the word welcome with my pen. And to be honest, it didn't come out perfectly perfect, but I'll get to that in a minute. I did use my fingernails, and I tried to use nail polish remover, but it didn't quite work to remove my mistakes. So I found that using my fingernails instead actually just kind of worked the best. So what do you guys think? I personally really do like the way that this turned out. I know it's kind of hard to see right here in this shot. Let me see if I can... Yep, you can also see my lights. How's that? That's great. I learned quite a few things while doing this sign. So now we're going to jump into the do as I say, not as I did section of the video. First and foremost, it's important to note that if you choose to use glass instead of acrylic, it's going to be a whole lot more difficult to transport because this can break. And acrylic is a heck of a lot less likely to break, while glass could easily shatter. So take your time when packaging this and let whomever know is transporting it for you to deal with it very, very carefully. And also wherever you set this, make sure it's not in a windy spot, because if this blows over, obviously this is going to break. It's not tempered glass. This is just glass from the front of a picture frame. So just something to kind of keep in mind, like obviously be super careful when working with glass. The next thing that I learned is do not do this after consuming multiple cups of coffee, because you will get shaky hands and it is very hard to be nice and neat and steady when like you only have so-so hand skills to begin with, and then you add a bunch of caffeine on top of that. So like wait a good hour to 6 hours, whatever, after consuming caffeine before starting something like this, because otherwise it could be a whole lot more difficult than you signed up for. Another thing to take note of is because of my shaky hands, I got outside the lines a few times, but it was super easy to go back in afterwards with my fingernail actually and just kind of push the errant paint back into line, you know, and just be like, no, you don't belong here, like scoot on back. So all of my mistakes were like really easily like scraped away. I did try to use nail polish remover and that didn't work super well. I found that just using my fingernails worked the best, even though it did kind of end up ruining my manicure. It's okay. I do it for you guys, all right? I'd do anything for you. Like ruin my manicure. The next thing that I definitely should have done is I should have had 2 different pen sizes. I only had the fine tip pen and it made it really, really difficult to go back through and do all of the thicker lines, especially because this is actually like the 2nd or 3rd sign that I've done. I did a few practice runs and they turned out okay. I'm most thrilled with the results of this one, but the ink did run out. That, and if I had had a larger tip pen, it would have been a lot faster to fill in all of those thicker pieces. And then my last tip for you guys that I did not do with this particular one, but I did with my other signs, and I recommend that you do with yours, is clean it really well first. Your hands have a lot of oils on them, and I found that sometimes going over where my hand had been resting, it was a little difficult to get the ink to grab onto the glass because a little bit of my hand oils were there. So do your best to like not smear your hands back and forth across it. That, and you're gonna wanna start with a nice clean piece of glass, because going back in and cleaning it up afterwards obviously is not gonna be very easy because you don't wanna damage your design. So that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you decide to do something like this for your event, let me know. Tag me on Instagram, shoot me a DM. I love seeing your interpretations of my DIYs and how you use them for your wedding day, or heck, even in your home. I don't know. It could be cool. Now, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this now. I'm probably, honestly, just going to place it in the background and you guys are just going to like kind of see it, but not really. One last thing before we go, okay? This is serious talk right now. We are almost at 30,000 subscribers. What is happening? You guys are the best. You are, honestly, I tell people all the time, and by people, I mean my husband. I'm like, I have the best subscribers ever. Like, I actually ran into a subscriber, not physically, but like in a houseplant group on Facebook. Like, how is this happening to my life? I'm so blessed and so honored to be bringing you guys tips every single week to help you in your wedding planning process. So with that in mind, like this video if you like the video, and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And until next week, bye guys! It's gonna be really hard to get this thumbnail, huh? You see it? Okay, wait, let's try this. Wow.